You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Welcome to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, Luke Murray. And Luke is here to talk about mental health, but more specifically, men's mental health, because this is an area he's really, really passionate about and works in. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. Luke actually did my mental health course a few years back, already had a lot of knowledge and experience and came on the course. So I like to think I've been helpful in your career. But yeah, that's just me. Anyway, Luke, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. So yeah, as you said, I'm Luke. I am a personal trainer and Wim Hof Method instructor. And I like to work with men, really with depression, anxiety, work-related stress, or a history of suicidal ideation or attempts. The reason for wanting to work with that population is because that was me. And more than a few years ago now, I was suicidal pretty much every day for about a decade. I found exercise, which we'll probably talk more about later, which really put me on the road to recovery. And then I wanted to help men do the same, essentially.
And it's so important, isn't it? Because there's masses of research out there. There's masses of evidence out there. Anyone who wants to know, I can direct you to that. But this is much more about the impact that somebody like you gets from being more active, from exercising, but also the impact that you can have on other people. And I think it's something that, mental health, it tends to be kind of a bit of a homogenous topic, and actually how it impacts men can be very, very different to how it impacts on women. And I think this is where people like yourself who have that lived experience, have come through it, can be so much more approachable, if that's the right word, for men.
Yeah,
Do you find that?
I would hope that that's the case. I want to go back to what you just said. It being different for men and women, and I think the reason for that is from a young age we're told, big boys don't cry, man up, you know, all those sorts of things, and it's sort of ingrained into us. But men do cry, and I like to let people know that follow me that is okay. I cry. Every man cries.
Yeah.
And I would hope that does make me more approachable and relatable.
I think it is important, though, isn't it? Because I think with women, quite often we've got more of a natural supportive network in friends and things, is that we'll tell, oh, I'm feeling really low and I'm having a bad day and things like that. Whereas that kind of, we get our strength from that collective, oh, you poor thing, have you tried this? And, you don't always want advice, but sometimes it's just having that support network of people who listen to you over a cup of tea or whatever. Yeah. Whereas I think for men to actually sort of say, I'm feeling really low, I'm feeling really stressed, I'm having problems at work, it's a much harder conversation to initiate, isn't it? And I think this is where, like, you work with groups and charities where kind of people have come along for that reason, to initiate the conversation. But also it's important to have people like you that people can actually go to and sort of gradually start to talk about their mental health.
Yes. And yeah, what you said about the support network, I don't know, I'm not female, but I imagine it's easier for females to talk to their friends. I can't imagine all those years ago going to the pub with my mates and going, mid banter, oh, by the way, this is how I'm feeling. Can someone listen to me for a moment? I would have just said, pull yourself together, man up. move on. And it does make things more difficult because, as we know, the best thing to do to aid recovery from a mental illness is to talk about it.
Yes.
And, you know, men feel like they can't. So, yeah, I do. I work with, I volunteer for a charity called Men Walk Talk. And we go out walking and just chat. It doesn't even have to be about mental health, but quite often it is. And I had one guy who, after his first walk with us, said to me at the end, I just feel like for the first time in my life I've been listened to. And he he felt that, what was it he say? I can't even remember what he said, but he said, I finally feel like I'm on the right path after one session, just from being listened to.
But do you think sometimes it isn't just that that's the first time he's felt listened to, but maybe it's the first time he's actually felt safe enough to open up? And that's something I think, we know, as I mentioned earlier, the research is out there, the evidence is out there. We know that exercise, particularly aerobic exercise, is really, really good for things like anxiety and depression. We know that it has an impact on some of the comorbidities that go alongside more severe conditions like bipolar or schizophrenia. But in particular, aerobic exercise, or the combination of aerobic and resistance training, is really powerful, isn't it, for people with mental health? But do you find that things like the walking encourages people to talk more than, say, being in the gym chatting?
Yeah, yeah. I do find that the walking, especially because you're both facing forward,
Yeah.
and not sat across a desk from each other, or whatever, or sat in a circle. I find that, I don't know, but I feel like people are more open to talking because you you're doing two things at once almost. So it's almost taking your mind off what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and not it's not got that therapeutic environment. You're walking, you're going for a walk, and you're having a chat. Whereas if you're in a circle, it's almost like you're telling everyone your problems and hoping for the best.
We know, I mean, episode 11, I was talking to Heather about kind of biophilia and the importance of nature and what happens. And we know that, particularly around forests, wooded areas and things like that, it actually has a physiological effect on our parasympathetic nervous system, our vagus nerve, in calming us down and things like that. So maybe there's an element of being out in nature, even if it's more of an urban environment. There's still going to be some sort of growing stuff around, if you like. But I think maybe that has an impact as well. It's because even though we're being active, it's having this calming effect on our parasympathetic system, which makes people just feel a little bit more comfortable about opening up.
100%.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And in fact, daily I make sure that I take my shoes and socks off and go and stand on the grass outside, just because, whether it's doing anything or not, I don't know, but it does make it lifts my mood. And there's certainly a lot of evidence to suggest that, being in contact with nature is good for that.
It's hugely powerful physically and also emotionally, mentally, and things like that. And I think, things like you're saying with the walking and talking, it's the combination of factors, isn't it? It's so important. So, leaving aside kind of research and things like that, how important do you find it is for your clients to be physically active?
I can't even put that on a scale. If there was a scale, it would be right at the top.
Yeah.
It's so important. There's many things that are important, but exercise has to be up there. And I think sometimes when we say the word exercise, people go, "Oh, he wants me to go for a run. I've never been for a run in my life." Blah blah blah. It's as simple as going out for a walk. Making sure that you've got dedicated time to go for a walk every day, or just being active in some way rather than sitting indoors in the same four walls every day. It's going to bring your mood down. So it's so important. And it there's plenty of research out there that people can go and find, but anecdotally it was it was the biggest thing to aid my recovery. It saved my life, in fact. The gym saved my life. There was a time in my life, I think I had a breakdown because just after it, I spent 6 months indoors. And then one day I woke up and I said, I can't do this anymore. I'd never done any kind of exercise in my life, but the right thing to do in that moment was to go out for a run. Who
Yeah.
knows why? It just came to me. And where I'd been indoors for 6 months, I did not get far. I managed to run around the block and I got back to my driveway and threw up because I'd exerted so much energy. But suddenly I don't know, I felt alive. I felt better than I'd felt in years, and I knew that it was going to be key. And from that point on, it was so regular. Uh, I was exercising every single day, which probably wasn't actually that healthy, but I, I'd made sure that I dedicated time every single day to exercise, and I stopped feeling suicidal as a result of that.
Which is amazing. How much would it have helped you to have a mentor like you are to other people, do you think?
Yeah, I certainly would have got there a lot quicker. I probably wouldn't have spent those 6 months locked in my house. I think having someone to guide me through that, even just if it had been in the beginning, just to have a chat, and
Yeah.
then they sort of said, right, let's go out for a walk. We're just going to do 10 minutes, and I think I would have got there a hell of a lot quicker.
And do you think it's important? And everybody who listens in is probably sick of me saying this right now, but it's so important to start where you are. Like you said, you went for a run and you didn't get very far, but even that, you threw up afterwards. Do you think it's important to have that guidance and right, where are you now? Where can we start? How can we build gradually? Because I think there must be a lot of unrealistic expectations, like you say. People say, oh, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to go to a class. I don't want to go for a run. Whereas actually, okay, let's just go for a walk. Let's just stretch even. Let's just stretch.
Yeah.
So do you think it's important that people like you exist to guide people to say, right, okay, what can we do that's just a bit more than you're doing now?
Yeah. Absolutely. You need to know where you are. And in fact, people that know me will be sick of hearing me say it. You need to have those goals. And if that goal is a mountain, break it down into small pebbles,
Yeah.
take a pickaxe to it. So I always say to people, maybe your big scary goal is to, I don't know, go to the gym daily or 5 times a week for the next 6 months. That sounds really terrifying, doesn't it? So what's the first step? Well, it's putting your shoes on and walking out of your front door and getting to the gym, and set it in those sort of steps. So really break those goals down into tiny ones and just commit to each one as you go. So yeah, I went off in a little bit of a tangent there, but in answer to your question, absolutely know where you're at and do the exercise based on your own ability. Don't try and overdo it because not everyone's going to be like me and end up getting addicted to it. It's going to put a lot of people off if it's too much, especially if you throw up.
Yes, yeah, it's never a good thing, is it? Never a good thing. But it's like you say, what's the smallest step? Is put your shoes on and walk out of your front door might be the first one, and you turn around and go back in and take your shoes off. The next step might be to walk halfway to the gym and back, and the next step might be to get to the gym and turn straight round and come back. You don't have to say day one, go to the gym. There are smaller steps that you think, okay, I can do this. I'm that bit closer. And I think when we're working with people to sort of get more active, we don't necessarily, like you say, we don't take the pickaxe to the mountain and create pebbles. We just look at the mountain and think, I've got to climb that. We don't think, right, okay, so what are the small things that I can do? Even if it's get your diary out and write in exercise time 3 times a week, once a week even. And that's so important, isn't it? Do you think it's harder for men to kind of start small? than it is to kind of have these big, scary expectations and think, oh, I'm never going to be able to do that. Do you think it's harder for men to actually start smaller?
Yeah, well, I don't want to generalize, but I think in general, yes. Um, I think men are competitive by nature, and it's like, well, if I'm going to go to the gym, I might as well do it properly. I'm going to sign up. I'm going to go 5 times a week, and then by the end of the week, they've done themselves in,
Yeah.
and can't continue the second week, and then it's very easy to not go the third week if you haven't been the second week. So I always say it's so important to break those goals down, because the bigger your goal, the more overwhelming it is. But what happens when we achieve something, no matter how small it is, if we've committed to that small goal and then we achieve it, we're motivated to continue and do the next bit. So maybe your goal is to go to the gym 3 times a week after work. Well, okay, break that down. I leave work and I drive to the gym car park.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you commit to. If you get there and you want to do the next step, what's the next step? It's walking into the gym and getting changed, or maybe doing your warm up. Just commit to that part, achieve it, and then potentially you'll want to continue and do the next bit.
It's so important, isn't it, to be realistic about any goal, any aim, anything that you want to achieve. It is that breaking it down, isn't it, and taking it a step at a time. And I do think sometimes within the fitness industry particularly, we kind of start everybody at the same point rather than saying, right, okay, so you're doing nothing, so let's just do something. Something is better than nothing. And even if that is just a short walk or a stretch or 10 press-ups, it's
Yeah,
more than you were doing before. It's a start. And like you say, it's breaking it down. If you get to the gym and you think, do you know what, I really don't want to do this today, then that's fine. You've done a bit. And this is where, particularly with mental health, it's so important to understand that linear progression isn't necessarily going to happen, is it? It's progression might just be driving to the gym rather than actually going in and doing your program. So it's about recognizing that you may have days where you feel you can do a lot more and days where it's just not going to happen, because the way you're feeling, the way your mood is, the way your body is, to push yourself just isn't going to work for you. And do you think it's important that people actually get into the pattern of recognizing when their minds, when their bodies are saying, today's not a good idea. Today we are just going to go and sit by a river, or we're going to sit and look at a tree, because that's what we need.
100%. And I even do it with the people I work with one to one. I have a plan for these people, and a plan usually a month in advance, but every session starts with a check-in. How have you been today? How have you been this week? Okay. So if they say, oh, I've had the week from hell, I am exhausted, work's been so stressful. All right, let's scrap today's plan. Let's go and do some mobility. Let's do some stretching, maybe a little bit of breath work at the end. Let's get you calmed down, bring that stress level down. But equally, if they come in and say, I've had the best week, I've trained 3 times a day, I've hit personal bests every single time, blah blah blah. I'm going to say, okay, well let's change things up. You know, we've got this plan, but let's add in some more. You're in the mindset where you can do more work today, so let's do more work. And it's always about meeting the client at their level.
Yeah, where they are. That's my big thing. Is
Yeah,
always is
exactly.
start where your client is. Now that may be the first time you meet them, or it may be on the day. And I'm going to come back to breath work, because actually, this is something I do talk about. Is we tend to think of activity as faster, harder, stronger movement, whereas actually breath work is activity, and it's an important part of normal activity as well. But you mentioned stress, and I think you talked about work related stress right at the beginning, and I think it's something like 3 out of 10 people who are in employment experience what is considered to be almost unacceptable or unmanageable levels of stress. And do you think, again, this is an area where men in particular tend to just get on with it rather than actually recognizing it and doing something about it? And is this something that your clients experience?
Yeah, I certainly think that a lot of people leave it too late before they do anything about it. You know, I've been signed off in the past by the doctor, but was that what I needed? Probably not, because it was great while I was signed off. But then you're going back to the same environment and it just peaks again. So I think this is certainly a subject that needs to be talked about on a much bigger level, because work-related stress is a really real thing. And as you said, a lot of people, that's a big percentage of the population that are having to deal with that. What's the issue? It's the pressures of work. It's not, we need to take some time off. Sometimes that's exactly what you need. You need to take some time off and come back and get back to it with a clear head. But I think we're being, especially in this country, I think we're being asked to do more and more and more with less and less time. And it's creating a problem. Again, I went off on a tangent. What was the actual
No,
question there?
you've answered it. Talk about work-related stress for
I've
men is
answered
that
it.
quite often it gets so bad that, like you say, there'll be a point where the body goes enough, and there'll be a kind of a minor breakdown or a major breakdown, or physical illnesses kick in that mean people have to take time off work. And I think, like you're saying, we're being, a lot of places, somebody leaves, they're not replaced, but their work is absorbed by others, and they were already really busy. It's very hard sometimes, isn't it, to speak up and say, look, I have more work on than I can handle, for fear of being seen as incompetent or not capable of it. And again, I think this is something where workplaces, if we can start to incorporate things like you're doing walk and talk or physical activity sessions within workplaces where you haven't got to go somewhere, it comes to you. I think for me, that's such an important part of the duty of care of employers. And it's a good way of noticing, who maybe is struggling and doing more about it. Do you think there needs to be more awareness in businesses about mental health issues?
Yes, I think it needs to be approached a different way, though. I think it needs to be approached from a money saving route, as if every company in the country hired a well-being manager who ran 10-minute, I don't know, breath work or meditation or yoga sessions every single morning before everyone started work, I think potentially that would sort the problem out, and the company would probably save a hell of a lot of money on people taking time off, because I think a lot of illnesses that you wouldn't normally relate to stress probably are caused by that. Like you get super stressed and run down, and then you get ill in other ways that you wouldn't even normally relate to that. So people take time off, and I
I'm gonna,
genuinely think that.
yeah, I'm gonna have to find out the company. There's a company, they're big in the States, and I can't think of the name of them now. But apparently they shut down their website at lunchtime. They shut everything down at lunchtime. It's like, nope, everybody needs a lunch break. So actually, we're going to shut the company down for an hour. Tough. And public holidays and things like that, they shut the company down because it's like, nope, people have got more important things to do than work through their lunch hour. Off you go. And I just think, maybe more recognition of that, because, we need breaks throughout the day. And just because someone's taking a break doesn't mean they're slacking off. It means actually they're regaining their energy. And it is important, isn't it? And it's something, like you say, in workplace well-being, which actually is part and parcel of the overall health and safety executive requirements, but it's not always carried out in a way. It's almost like we need to make it compulsory for people to participate in wellbeing activities, don't we? Rather than, if you want, it's there. It's no, you're going to do it.
Yeah,
We need to make it harder
be
for
written
people.
into their contract.
Yeah, that's it. You must do this. It's for your own good. We know, I don't know anyone ever who's gone out for a walk or gone and done some exercise or some sport or gone for a swim and come back and say, oh God, I feel rubbish now. I wish I hadn't done that. I know loads of people who say, oh, I wish I had gone for a walk. I wish I had gone to the gym. But people who exercise don't turn around afterwards and say, that was a waste of time. They go, oh, God, I did that. I feel so much better. And that is so
Yeah.
important, isn't it? So tell me a little bit about the projects you're working on. And then I do want to talk about the Wim Hof instructor and the breath work that you're doing, because, again, this is something that is becoming a lot more popular. And, yes, it has benefits for us physically, but I'd really like to focus on the benefits for mental health. So a little bit about the projects you're working on at the moment.
Sure. So yeah, currently, in terms of personal training, I only work one-to-one, but that is changing very soon. I'm currently converting my garage into a studio, which should be finished today. I'm also starting a online group coaching program, which I'm hoping will be ready to launch in 2 to 3 weeks. That will be, I haven't decided on a name yet, but it's something like the Live Long Project, where I want to work on longevity, really. So it would, it would speak to a wide range of goals. So whether that's weight loss or stress, anyone would be able to join that, and there would be a monthly theme with a goal based on that. But then in terms of things that are specifically mental health, again, I'm a little way off launching this, but I am going to be hopefully within the next 2 months launching a 28-day program that is just for men that are suffering. And then that is online. And then in person, I'm hoping, if I can get permission to be able to do this down the beach, it will be another small group coaching program where we will start with breath work and mindfulness, go into a half an hour high intensity workout, and then finish with a C dip and a chat about the previous week, really, and goals and things like that.
God, sounds amazing. Make sure I've
So
got all the
yeah.
details of that, because I will put them in with the episode when it launches, because I think it's something that a lot of people will be interested in, or may know somebody that's interested. So make sure I know that. So the sea dip, presumably, especially in the UK, is going to be cold.
But yeah,
So
most of the year.
yeah, most of the year it is. So tell me a little bit then about the Wim Hof, being a Wim Hof instructor, and a little bit what it is, because a lot of people may not be familiar with it, but what it is, how you got into it, and why you find it so beneficial for mental health.
Okay, so I always say, and I mentioned earlier that the gym saved my life, and the Wim Hof method supercharged it. So how did I find out about it? That's a good question. I think I was working in a gym. This was pre-COVID, and a colleague of mine said, "Oh, have you heard of this guy, Wim Hof?" I was like, no. So he told me a little bit about him. This crazy Dutch guy that breaks all kinds of world records, including climbing Everest past the death zone in nothing but shorts. And I think he ran a marathon through the Sahara Desert with no water. He ran a half marathon.
He's certainly done some, let's just say, unusual things.
Yeah. So that hearing all that sort of piqued my interest. And then, I was talking to my colleague about him for a bit, and that was it. I never really thought much more about it. And then I can't remember if Wim wrote his book just before COVID or released it just after lockdowns. I'm not sure on the timeline, but it popped up on my Amazon, suggested for you page. I was like, I remember. Okay, so I'm gonna buy this book, and I read it in a day, maybe a day and a half, and I really related to him because he lost his wife to suicide years and years ago, and wanted to do the same himself, but was left with 4 children to bring up. But he, developed this method based on cold water and breath work and mindset. And in the book, he teaches you how to do it. So it's like, okay, well, I'll give the breath work a go. I'm not sure about cold water. That sounds horrendous. But I think as soon as I did the first session of breathing, I was like, no, actually, I feel so good. I'm gonna jump in the cold shower and see how I feel. I felt amazing. Um, I felt for the rest of the day like I could do anything I wanted to do. I could have achieved anything that day, and I think you get quite a large hit of dopamine um, from the cold, but also from the breathing, and that was it. So I sort of practiced that for about 2 years, and my mum was a little bit interested in it as well. So we went off to a fundamentals workshop with a local instructor. And while I was there, I was talking to the instructor about how he got into it, and it was a similar story to mine. I said, "Oh, I'd really love to share this with the world like you're doing as well." He said, "Do it." And it was those two words. I was like, "Yeah, okay, why don't I?" So I went and qualified, and um, as you've mentioned, in terms of physical health benefits, it's endless. But I really wanted to focus on the mental health benefits. I genuinely believe that, well, I don't want to say anyone because everyone's different, but the vast majority of people can heal their problems with the method and exercise. You can't just
It's part of
do
a
the breath work,
yeah.
and yeah, it would have to be part of a program almost that you can set for yourself. I think you know what I wouldn't want people to do is do the breath work in the morning, cold shower, and then never leave the house.
Yeah,
Although I think they'd find that difficult anyway after doing it. They would want to get up and go and do something. Um, but there's so much scientific evidence for the benefits, but in terms of anecdotal evidence, it's vast. They released a survey a number of years ago, or a university did, based on people's experience with the Wim Hof method, and one guy's response really just sticks out in my mind because he was suffering with severe depression and anxiety for, I'm sure he said 15 years, which is similar to my story. And he said after one day of doing the Wim Hof method, he claimed that 90% of his issues were gone, and then continued. And I'm guessing he went to 100% after that. But yeah, it was just that response that really stuck out in my mind because I felt very similar when I started as well.
and it's because cold water swimming. Cold water swimming, cold water immersion's been around for centuries probably, but it seems to be the combination of the breath work as well and really being in charge. Again, I talked earlier about nature and how that has an impact on our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest and calming down system. So is it a similar thing with that? You think it has such we tend to live our lives very much with our sympathetic nervous system, our fight, flight receptors are all on fire all the time. So actually we need things in our lives that do the opposite, that bring us back down to a normal state. We think of being on alert as normal, but actually our normal state is pretty much chilled out, isn't it?
Should be, yeah. Um, the method activates both systems. So we're putting our bodies under stress by even with the breath work because there's a breath hold. But during the breathing, especially, you're activating the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. With the cold, again, if done correctly, you should be activating both as well because you know, as you get into the cold, it's going to be sympathetic, and then as you can start to control your breath and come to a calm state of mind, then you're going to be activating the other. Um, but yes, I think in terms of the the hormetic stress, i.e. the good kind of stress, your I forgot what my trail of thought was, but essentially with the method, it's hormetic stress, which is good for you because it allows us to adapt to those situations later on. And to to give some evidence that would relate to anyone that was listening, I have been going into the cold for a long time now, and come winter time, I don't really need a coat. I definitely don't. I can go out in shorts and t-shirt if I want. So just to relate it to what a listener's everyday life might be like, I don't really feel the cold anymore. So I think there's a lot of people out there that wrap up in 200 layers before going out in the winter, and I feel that I don't need that.
Wow. And for anyone who's not familiar with kind of stress, sympathetic, parasympathetic, we need stress in our lives. If we didn't have some sort of stress in our lives, we'd never do anything because there'd be no impulse. Most of us we get stressed by the things that shouldn't increase our stress levels, but also we don't manage our stress very well. So things like breathing, breath work, and this, give us the right kind of stress that maintains our lives moving forward, really. And again, it's, you can't eliminate stress in your life, but what you can do is learn to manage it a lot better. And that, I think, is again, it's like fitness and everything else, isn't it? You start where you are. You don't start by saying, right, as of today, I'm going to reduce all the stress in my life, because you never will. But you can sort of say, right, there's one thing here that I need to be better at managing. And I think, it's I do a lot of emotional freedom technique tapping, and again, it will just be, I won't say, right, I'm going to remove all the stress around this particular thing by doing that, but it'll be, right, I'm just going to look at just one little tiny element of it and help me cope a bit better with that. And like I say, I think when we're learning these things, it's start where you are. You don't jump in an ice bath and stay in there for 10 minutes your first time out. You would start with the cold shower and things. And, we know the benefits, that have been researched for, as I say, for decades, but this has just really brought it to the fore about how it can have a positive impact both on physical but also on mental health. And let's face it, that's what we're talking about, is that impact on mental health. And like you're saying, that you're starting this kind of outdoor group where there's exercise, there's breath work, there's a dip in the sea. You're combining so many different elements of nature, of natural being, that I think it's going to be really, really interesting I'd love you to come back on actually and talk about how that project went and some of the benefits and things, because it's really nice to know what happened and how it benefited people. So just aware of time, but is there what key advice, or what one key thing would you say to somebody who is a man who is struggling with mental health at the moment, whether it's a diagnosable condition or not, but just who's thinking, I can't cope, I'm struggling? What would be your advice?
My main piece of advice would be talk to someone, whoever that might be. And even, start that conversation off with, I don't need solutions, I just need you to listen. And then, talk to a person about, whatever it is that you're struggling with, and just be open and honest. And they just need to shut up and listen, sort of thing. Definitely start some sort of activity, whatever that is. It could be anything from dedicated half an hour walking to all the way up to 2 hours a night in the CrossFit gym, whatever it is, whatever. I think the thing with exercise is everyone seems to think that there's a what's the word, a hierarchy of exercises, but it's not. The best exercise for a person is the one that they're going to do and stick to. Yeah. So find something you enjoy and do it. And then I think finally, let's take work related stress, for instance. If you're at work and you're really struggling, there is a simple technique you can use to really bring that stress down, which is called the physiological sigh. And that's, you take a double inhale. So you fill your lungs completely, pause, take, a tiny little bit more air in and then exhale slowly through the mouth. If you do that 4 or 5 times, your stress level will decrease instantly. Those are the 3 things I always tell people that are struggling, and yeah, I'll continue to do that because I think they're so important.
I think the most important thing there for me, well, it's all important, but the key thing is when you talk to somebody, say, I don't want solutions, I just need you to listen. Because that often you talk to somebody and they immediately jump in with, oh, you should do this, you should do that, and that it minimises what you're trying to sort of say. And I think sometimes it's better to talk to somebody that you're slightly removed from, isn't it? Because they're just more likely to listen. But yeah, thank you for that. As like I say, it's an area that I know is so important, and I think more people like you who are there for men to work with, to improve their physical health through fitness, but also working on mental health is just so important. And I know there are various initiatives all around the UK, but it's for people who are local to you. We'll put your links in so that they can maybe get in touch with you, particularly for the online stuff, because sometimes that's a bit easier to access, isn't it? Because you're not walking into an empty room. You can just be a little bit detached. So I've got your details. People can find you at www.lukemurray.fit. Instagram, you're lukemurray.fit as well. And on Facebook, you're luke.murray.coaching. But all the links will be in there. And if, like Luke, you're a fitness instructor and you're particularly interested in learning more, I do have my certificate in activity and exercise for adults with mental health conditions starting in September. So if you are interested, contact me. You just message me, you'll find me. But it's a good place to start to understand some of the issues that people face, and also, like with any field like this, is one of the things we want to do is reduce some of the stigma, because that way more people will come forward, won't they, and chat, if they think they're not going to be judged or stigmatized, because I think that does stop a lot of people, is they're worried about people thinking, something's wrong with them, whereas actually it's nothing's wrong with them, they just have a condition that needs support. Yeah. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. Yes. And first of all, I certainly recommend your courses. I learned a hell of a lot. And what I was going to say as well, if you can't find someone to talk to that's a little bit removed, then absolutely reach out to me on Instagram. I'm always happy to talk to people non-judgmentally. So I'll 100% listen and not offer solutions.
Yeah. It's so important, isn't it? We don't, sometimes we talk because we just need to talk. We don't want a solution. And sometimes it's the act of talking that we actually create our own solutions, because we can just freely speak. So it's so important. Luke, thank you so much for coming along and talking today. As I say, I think it's a really, really important area, and it's one that we need a lot more discussion, a lot more openness, and a lot more opportunity for people to access support. It's not quite as straightforward sometimes as just going to the gym and starting to exercise. It is working with somebody like you, a personal trainer or an instructor who understands that not every day is the same, that not all progression is doing more, faster, harder in the gym. Sometimes the progression is recognizing that today is not the day for exercise. So, thank you so much for coming along. You've been listening to me, Sarah, and my guest, Luke Murray, on Creating Active Lives. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we will see you all soon. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.